The newest members of the young Eagles secondary continue to ball out, creating some tough decisions for the front office. Also, we talk about why one Eagles player is destined for a Pro Bowl season. And lastly, is wide receiver 3 an issue for this squad? We'll talk about all of it, but of course, welcome into A to Z Philly. I'm RB. You guys and gals have been absolutely killing it. Be sure to keep liking the videos if you enjoy the content and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the coverage. Boy, do we have some things to talk about today, but of course, we started off with a question of the day. Pro Football Focus put out Eagles notable picks list since 2022. Man, what a stacked list here over the last couple seasons. And my question is, which young Eagles player do you think is going to have their breakout season this year? Give me your thoughts down below in the comments section. Before we jump into all of mine, let's give a shout out to our sponsor of today's show, and that is BetMGM. Enjoy your favorite sports like never before with BetMGM. Just download the app, sign up with the code ATOZPA, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win your first bet. With BetMGM, you'll get instant access to parlays, live betting options, player props, and daily boosted odds specials. And with BetMGM at your fingertips, every play and every game matter more than ever. So find out why BetMGM is the king of sportsbooks. Sign up today with bonus code ATOZPA and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you do not win your first bet. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. All right, man. So if I was a betting man, I would say that the Eagles' destined player to break out this season is no other than Jalen Carter. And this list was put out by Pro Football Network, and they actually have Jalen Carter as number 7 on the DT rankings coming into next season. Chris Jones, Dexter Lawrence, Quinnen Williams, Derek Brown, Jeffrey Simmons, Cameron Hayward, and then Jalen Carter. So not even looking at just the Eagles or the young players, but in general in the NFL. And we know Jalen Carter had a stellar start the last NFL season. He was looking like he was on pace for one of the best rookie seasons in Eagle history. He stacked up 3.5 sacks in the first 5 games, and then he only had 2.5 the rest of the way. But I think there's some important things to remember along the way. One, he had a back injury that was lingering, and he wasn't himself for the rest of the year, similar with Jordan Davis. And then in addition to that, you know, the Eagles did collapse. They had a switch of a defensive coordinator. Their whole system just caved in, and they just were not the same team. And there was a lot of adversity. But when you look at Jalen Carter, he was one of the best players, maybe the best player in that draft, and he showed a lot of promise, but he also left a lot of meat on the bone. So I think he's coming out here ready to rock. You look at the Eagles, you know, new system, I guess, with Vic Fangio, and he already talked a lot about it the other day, which we discussed, but you know, he's going to have these guys ready to go, and he's been around the game for a long time. There's no playing around when it comes to Vic Fangio. Are there questions about certain elements of the scheme? Absolutely. But we know we are going to see a lot of 3-man fronts. Jalen Carter's going to be right in that mix. There's no more Fletcher Cox. Jalen Carter, it is your time to step in and be the beast that we know you are. What we saw in those first 5 games, just immaculate pressure on the quarterback. And he's probably going to have some outside linebacker help. So will he see a lot of double teams? For sure. But he saw those last year. He got acclimated to it. And Jalen Carter has the upside to have a Pro Bowl season because I believe he's going to be back healthy and ready to go. And with some of these other gems that he has alongside him, a lot of talented players, you know, I think he's going to become a real leader of this defense here in 2024. And I think it's also important to remember that Jalen Carter probably had guys like Fletcher Cox, you know, spread some wisdom upon him, right? So I think Carter is really just going to be a menace this season. He's one of the players I'm most excited to watch along with the other Georgia Bulldogs. But in my opinion, Carter has the highest upside of all of them. And speaking of upside, a guy who we talked about last week who, you know, was labeled as a secret weapon. We talked about him potentially, you know, just going out there, essentially trying to make a name for himself, coming from a small school. Well, guess what? Sean Stevens is actually signing a 3-year deal today in Philadelphia per Jake Rabadai. And man, Sean Stevens apparently went out there in, you know, rookie camp and he made a name for himself, made a couple big plays, apparently had an interception. So maybe this is another guy you throw into the mix. Who knows if he'll make the, 53, but at the end of the day, man, good to have more bodies, more competition, and more players want to go out there and just try to, increase that level of competition among the rest. And you look at the Eagles secondary, I think they really have some tough decisions to make. We came into this offseason not knowing who was going to be here, where they were going to go in the draft, but now they get Quinyon Mitchell, they get Cooper DeJean, they get the rest of these guys, and Thomas Peterson put a list here of the Eagles' new look secondary, right? They signed CJ Gardner-Johnson. They still have big play slate. They still have James Bradbury on the roster. And then they have all these guys they picked up in recent years, whether it's in the late rounds or undrafted, right? The Keely Ringos, the Eli Ricks, Josh Jobe. There's guys on the Eagles that aren't even on this list. I mean, I'm thinking about Zach McPherson. Remember him? Mekhi Gardner, Mario Goodrich. There's so many players that are going to be out there fighting for spots. And the Eagles signed Avonte Maddox as well. So, look, man, some of these guys are not going to make the Eagles week 1 roster. And it comes down to you don't have enough spots. You don't want to pay all these guys. You can't retain them all. Maybe some go to practice squad. I don't know. But at the end of the day, tough decisions are coming forth. And I want to know from Eagle Nation, who do you think is going to be the odd man out? Who is going to be the one that gets cut? Because obviously, we have to wait till training camp to see who comes back in better shape and who's ready to rock. But there are some tough decisions to be made, and it is clear as day that with the Eagles drafting Quinyon Mitchell, drafting Cooper DeJean, they were not satisfied. They are looking to upgrade, and they will put the best players out there available. Vic Fangio said it the other day, I'm going to draw up the schemes, but we need good players. So they're looking to improve in every single way. And I'm really starting to think James Bradbury could be an odd man out. But we'll see. We'll see come week 1 and, once we get there in a few months. So it will be interesting. The last thing I want to talk about, though, is the wide receiver 3 position. And Reuben Frank put out an article on NBC Sports Philadelphia discussing this battle. It has become a topic of conversation in recent days and weeks. And I guess I'm wondering if it is as big of an issue as people are making it out to be. Right? You look at the past couple years and Rube talks about it here, right? Zach Pascal and Quez Watkins and even Julio Jones last year who had a couple tutties, but they need an upgrade, right? For sure. But how big of it is a concern when you look at AJ Brown and Devontae Smith? And oh, by the way, Dallas Goedert, right? Now they have Saquon Barkley. They have all of these weapons accumulated on this offense. Is it a big issue, right? I think it opens the doors for one of these late round picks or undrafted guys to step up and be a diamond in the rough, to be one of those gems. But I don't think it's so important. Like the third string wide receiver is not going to come out here and have a game in the first couple weeks where he needs to go and catch the ball 7 times for 100 yards, Like occasionally you're going to need that deep threat, or you're going to need that guy on an underneath route to maybe break one off. But I think it's almost virtually impossible for opposing defensive coordinators to game plan for AJ and Devontae and Dallas and Saquon and even Jalen with his legs. So I don't think it's as big of a concern as people are making it out to be. But Rube talks about Devontae Parker having a disappointing career, and maybe he, can revitalize himself a little bit here in Philadelphia, but he is 31 and he's been bad the last several seasons. Then you have Paris Campbell, who they picked up, who has reached 170 yards once in 5 NFL seasons as a former second-round pick. But again, I am always of the belief that you take guys and you put them in roles that can maximize what they can do best. And look, I think one of these guys could potentially step up and be those guys, but they're also going to have competition from the draft picks, right? Aeneas Smith, Johnny Wilson, both likely long-range prospects. And then there's punt returner Britton Covey. There's so many guys on this roster, man. So look, at the end of the day, I think the Eagles will have time to figure out who this number 3 is. But, if they could find that gem who could just come in and pose more of a threat, right? Just be another guy in the minds of the opposing defense and put some fear into them. I think it even opens up the gates more for AJ and Devontae to just come out on a weekly basis and dominate the opposition. So I'm interested to see what happens. Rube says there are some interesting options, but I'd expect Parker to get the first crack at it, probably given his experience level and being in the league longer than the rest. But I also think there's a fair chance that the guy who ultimately ends up as the Eagles' third receiver is someone who isn't on the roster yet. So keep that in mind. That's a little nugget there. Maybe they go out and somebody gets cut elsewhere in camp and they go pick them up on a 1-year deal and they say, here you go. Come in and produce for the Philadelphia Eagles. That would probably indicate that maybe nobody here goes out and takes it. So we'll see what happens. A lot of competition at a lot of different positions, but give me all of your thoughts down below in the comment section. As always, appreciate everybody tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That being said, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.